faster. Living off borrowed time. The clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed time. The clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed time. The clock tick 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 tick. The clock tick 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 faster. Living off borrowed time. The clock 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 tick faster.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Living Off Borrowed Time podcast. I am your host, Patrick and Patrique and joined for the first time in a while, not by my usual co-host, Optimal Audio, Caleb, but by Jurmainson. And normally when I get together with Jurmainson, we're talking about an Armand Hammer album, and as you might have noticed, one just dropped. So thank you for joining me again.
No problem. I'm glad to be here again.
Yep. And the album in question, Shrines, is a very desolate industrial album, as you've heard, that I think they want you to listen to in abandoned factories and meat grinding plants. So,
yeah.
No, it's one of their. It's definitely a piece with their past two albums, but it was destined to be like something that, because they've gotten more popular, I feel like everybody wanted to have a quick take on it, and Armand Hammer is just not something you can digest and shit out a quick take on quickly. Even honestly, we're doing this a month after it came out, and I still feel like it's a little early. Like, I'm still finding new shit to like hear in it and appreciate about it. But I wanted to say something on it because I think it's definitely the best album I've heard all year, and I feel like it's just as good as Rome and Paraffin, and it definitely follows up on a lot of things they're saying on it, and it evolves from them. I don't know. There's a lot to say about it. Like, there is about all their shit, solo and as a group.
One reason why it's hard to have a quick take on this album or any album they make or any EP they make, mixtape, whatever, is because they reference old lines from previous albums or even their own solo albums. So I think just today I was playing Furtive Movements, and I heard a bunch of lines on Furtive Movements that were reused on Paraffin or reused on Shrines. And it's just like, that even that one facet is a lot to consider when having to digest an Armand Hammer project, in my opinion.
Well, it's because they're throwing so much at you even before you consider that. Like, the level of references they're working with. Like, I was thinking about this. What was the reference I caught when I was listening to it just today for the podcast? Was something about, like, haters gonna hate. I think it was on War Stories. It was some line about Donovan McNabb, and now I got to look it up because it was really fucking funny. Because Woods doesn't make a lot of sports references, but when he does, they're great. And it was like a haters line and Donovan McNabb. And it's like Donovan McNabb had like the most haters of, like, just maybe I get this from living around the Philly area or whatever, but he had the most passionate haters who would like be his biggest fans and his worst haters within the same week. And I think that's what he's getting at with that line.
So he was an Eagles quarterback from which time period?
The 2000s, like for most of the 2000s. And he got the Super Bowl, but his most infamous moment was he couldn't manage the clock in the Super Bowl when they had a lead on the Patriots, and he actually threw up in the huddle on live television. He threw up during the Super Bowl.
Oh, shit.
So I'm actually just going to Google Billy Woods McNabb to find the line.
I think I found it.
It was the right song. Yeah, Donovan McNabb, even his neighbors even the haters didn't want it to be this bad. Donovan McNabb, even his neighbors pretended to be sad. Yeah, where it's just like, I'm trying to think of it in the context of the song, because that's one of the densest songs on here, War Stories. That song kind of reminded me of, well, I don't know. I don't want to just dive right into the songs, because I wanted to start by talking about what was your first impression of the album, like when you first heard it. Because I actually it dropped at midnight. They were punctual about it. but I waited because I had to work the next day. I didn't have the time to budget for the album, so I waited until after work to actually listen to it so I could digest it, because I didn't want to rush listen to this album. And like, what was your first impression of it, having heard everything they've done prior?
When it first came out, I bought the CD. So usually when you buy a physical copy, they give you a voucher for a digital version.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I guess I might have deleted mine by accident. So I asked for a voucher and I got it. And I think, unfortunately for me personally, I think Rate Your Music kind of stifles my listening experience. And I want to blame myself on that one, not the website. I think that the website can influence me on certain things, and I just allowed it to happen. But anyway, I think what I was doing first, I was reading Rate Your Music a lot, like the comment section on the album page. I was reading a lot of Rap Genius. I was reading a lot of YouTube comments on the songs themselves. And then when I played the album, the first time I played it, I actually stopped around the mid section of the album because I felt like I was rushing to listen to it just to have an opinion on it and not wait for my moment to actually personally sit down and digest the album. So I waited after that. And when I played it again, I just felt like the sound of the album, it just sounded really disjointed in terms of the beat selection. And I want to use the word disjointed in the context of it's just like a barrel, like a smorgasbord of different kinds of foods. That imagine going to a buffet blindfolded and having to try food without knowing what it is. That's kind of what Shrines was to me. I played the album and every song was just like, okay, this beat is totally different now. Okay, Solarium, this is totally different now. And then when I get to War Stories, okay, War Stories is totally an old Armand Hammer style track. But then Frida is not. You know what I'm saying? I was like, wow, Frida's really interesting. I was really like taken off guard by this album.
It definitely does not. It plays against your expectations for an Armand Hammer album. And the first single was Shrines, and I actually did hear that before I heard anything from the album. I watched the video. I saw that the day before, actually, which I think is when they dropped it. Maybe they dropped it 2 days before. Beautiful video, by the way. And they're not subtle about the imagery in it or anything. It's very like floral. The entire imagery of the video is basically of like a desolate landscape that gets overrun with like vegetation and like the earth recovering from itself, basically. And that's what the song itself on an instrumental level sounds like to me, with like the Kaya chorus and the melodies. And that's what the first couple beats sound like to me until you get to King Tubby. King Tubby's when it starts getting dark. And I feel, and because like the second song, the Elucid solo song, which I think is the first time you really get a reference. Like I feel like I don't want to call it a hook, but he repeats at the beginning and the end, I'm more than the sun. I'm all in the sun. That part, like that definitely feels like he's referencing More Brilliant Than the Sun, MBTTS off of Save Yourself, which he actually makes a direct lyrical reference to later on Flava Flav, I believe it is. And on the next track right after that, Billy Woods directly references Alternate Side Parking to like directly reference your point. Like they're like very much tying this in with their solo work. And this is not something like, I think one of the big misconceptions about this album is when people were writing their own narratives on it, is they wanted it to comment on like quarantine and the everyday. This was written starting before that. And I think people were kind of superimposing their own narratives on it.
Where did you see that at?
The whole thing, I'm mainly going off of what, did you listen to the Call Out Culture podcast? I think we were talking about that.
No, I didn't watch the whole thing, no.
Well, they were talking about how, I think it was Castro who was saying the tweet about where it was like this album, like he said the same thing about like the album had like very like nature feelings to it or whatever. And then he reads the first review about the Armand Hammer album. Maybe it was Woods who was actually talking about this. This is like Armand Hammer comes out with another gritty, industrial, dark, isolated comment on, the quarantine era. And it's like, I guess that was the initial Twitter reaction. And it's like, this is what people expected after Paraffin and Rome. But really, what I've got out of this album after, living with those albums and having listened to this one quite a bit in recent times is more that it's part of a trilogy. And Rome, and like again, they're not extremely subtle. Like there are nuances to it. There are references that I don't get clearly that are over my head, and it's very like there's layers to it, but I don't think the overall theme is subtle. Like Rome, like the cover, like Rome is burning, and then Paraffin is like the chaos afterwards, and then Shrines, especially with the video you get for the lead single, it's like the rebuilding afterwards, the earth healing itself, like the rose growing from the desolation. And I feel like you get the vibe off the first couple tracks, but you know, these guys aren't super optimistic ever. Like, but I think it's probably their most optimistic album overall, even if it, although the thing about it is, I was thinking about this when I was listening to it today, was the very last line of Paraffin on Root Farm is Woods saying, "We didn't win. I can't see myself doing it all over." But then there's a lot of, I feel like, themes of cycle and rebirth in terms, I get that sort of theme off this album. And a lot of doing away with old bullshit and old patterns. Like that's kind of the theme of War Stories, is being sick of just rehashing old shit.
Interesting.
I'm kind of pulling some of that out of my ass. Some of it I'm just thinking of as I'm saying it. Other things have just kind of been, and a lot of it comes from the instrumentals too. Like you're saying, instrumentally, it is very much like when you first hear it, it doesn't feel as cohesive as the other two Armand Hammer albums, or Furtive Movements for that matter.
Yeah, there's no rehearse with Ornette on here in terms of just the weirdest thing you've ever heard. I think this is more digestible in terms of what it sounds like. Yeah, I'm not sure about that comment. You know, when we discussed Rome, I think what happened was we make interpretations and we're not sure, and that's really the beauty of this entire discussion. So I don't know, man. I mean, if anything, so Charms, for example, the music video having the post-apocalyptic, the earth has grown over what civilization has built. It's grown over building, it's grown over cars, and all you see is just greenery. I mean, I think that could be commentary on the fact that Elucid and Billy Woods may think that their existence is doomed, or maybe that human existence is doomed to repeat itself, and humanity will die off before the planet. And I'm only going here because I actually took a environmental ethics class in college last semester. Mm-hmm. So the timing on this is really strange. But anyway, it might just be that the line on Root Farm saying, "I can't see us doing this all over," is kind of, maybe it's saying that, dude, fuck this, and there's no way to really prosper, and all we can do is just be aware of what's happening to make it less shitty.
I can see that, definitely. Although part of what informed what I was saying was Wood's comment on the Call Out Culture podcast, where he's talking about he actually says this is a more optimistic album. I'm in a more optimistic place. So he actually said that. But I think there are elements of this that are definitely not optimistic. Like I feel like Frida, like the way he flips the Nas, like which is probably the way he flips the Nas and Jay lines are probably my favorite lyrical parts of the album that aren't Elucid's verse. Oh, there's a fucking typo on the RYM page about Ramses, by the way. Somebody should fix that. I'm looking at the RYM page right now. They spell.
Do you want to talk about this Nas line? Do you want to get into this?
Yeah, I do want to get into this, where it's basically the most famous line on Life's a Bit on is it is Life's a Bit, that buck that bought a bottle could struck the lotto. Is it the world is yours or life's a bitch? I always get this fucking mixed up. I think it's Life's a Bitch. I'm pretty sure it's Life's a Bitch.
I gotta go find
Nas buck bottle.
What track is that line on?
Bitch. It's Life's a Bitch. The line is on Frida.
Okay, hold on.
Because it's like sounds good but rings hollow, or sounds tight but rings hollow.
So what do you think he means? So you tell me what you think about that, and I'll tell you what I think about that after you're done.
I think that it's a survival. Like he's coming at it from the perspective of somebody who is looking at it from a realistic perspective of, yeah, well, you aren't going to win the fucking lottery either. You're guaranteed to at least be happy for a little while with that bottle. I don't know if he's coming at it from his own perspective saying that, but at the very least, he's coming at it from some sort of level perspective of like that. The whole Nas perspective of it on Life's a Bitch is very pie in the sky. It sounds nice, but it ultimately in your everyday life rings hollow. Because how likely is it that you're going to hit the lottery? Like, it might be nice to wake up every day with that kind of optimism to hold that in, but that's not guaranteed. The fact that you drink this bottle and you're going to feel better for a little while is guaranteed. But there is a dark undercurrent to obviously what could happen after you drink that bottle. And like, I feel like the beat kind of reflects that, because there is like a little change in the beat when he talks about that, especially the second time when he refers back to it at the end of his verse. So I feel like he turns it on his head, because it's like the Nas line is a nice platitude, but Billy gives it like a sort of practical realism.
Yeah, I understand. I see what you mean. Yeah, I'm basically around the same ballpark as you on this one. I think the original line, it makes me think about, I guess, you could be better off investing your money in something smart. But I think I don't think spending money on a lottery ticket is really wise at all.
Right.
If you were asked, even a little kid knows that, like, the lottery, well, maybe not. What I mean is the lottery is really pie in the sky. It's statistically infinitesimally small in terms of how big your chances are of winning. So I think personally that alcohol and lottery tickets are both really, really just like unreliable ways to cope with realism and reality. And maybe he's saying that buck that bought the bottle could have struck the lotto is really just like really shallow. It's not really insightful. It's kind of naive in terms of how it applies to reality. Do you really think that you'll be better off spending money you spend on alcohol on a lottery ticket? You'll be better off saving that money and putting it in a piggy bank. And that's it. Both of those choices really suck. Why? I guess Billy Woods is saying both of these choices are really bad. And that's a hollow statement. That's probably what he's saying. And Nas was 16 when he wrote that, so I'm not really trying to like make it seem like I'm criticizing Nas. But yeah, I understand. I understand what's going on.
Also, on a technical level, there's a really cool double meaning. Sounds tight but rings hollow. A bottle is tight but hollow, like a bottleneck.
Oh.
And just the sound alike between ring hollow, Frida Kahlo, like. And also, just love the way he delivers the line. That's nobody's wife. That's Frida Kahlo, which I don't entirely get the significance behind. I'm pretty sure it's like from her life, obviously, and it's probably referenced in the movie they made about her life. But I can't front like I actually know the true significance behind that line in the context of the song. It just sounds really fucking like there are some Woods flows on this that are amazing. He has like this weird, like he really like varies up his flow on some stuff on here where he has this like exhausted way of flowing where I don't know if I'm describing this well, if you know what I'm talking about, where he just sounds like exhausted with the world, but it sounds so good the way he delivers his lines. It gives them like this really weary gravity.
Yeah. I can see
that. The
Eucharist
is one of them, obviously, and I'm trying to think of the other track that really has that. I think the Eucharist definitely, and the way he comes in on, is it Parables? I have to read Parables to know if he's. Yeah, I think it's Parables. Parables is also where he says "hanky chief" the same way that Milo does, which I think is funny.
From Yuri Christ, I get like this kind of rhinestone cowboyish kind of Billy Wood song.
Eucharist, you mean?
Yeah, is it called Eucharist? How do you say it?
Eucharist. I know
Eucharist.
It's a Catholicism reference. I was raised Catholic. The Eucharist is the body of Christ, which in a Catholic mass is like the big thing that you do is you eat the body of Christ every time you go to Catholic mass, and the sacrament is called the Eucharist.
Okay.
So that kind of plays into all the religious imagery he's doing in the song, especially with the Jay-Z line about the devils, the evils, which is the big sticking line on like that. He almost he closes with the Shine line, the punch line about Shine, which is really funny, like considering that he does the J line right before it. So he kind of closes on a joke But the J line is the big like thing that I think people would remember about his verse. I think. Do you want to go after that? We just talked about the Nas line. What do you think about the J line?
I'm not as educated on Jay's music as I am on Nas's, and both of them are not really that high anyway. But even without even understanding the line all the way, like I'm reading Rap Genius right now, obviously, but without even knowing what he's talking about, I know the skim through it part. I've heard Renegade many times, so I know that part at least. So even while knowing about Renegade, I just think that he's kind of just like saying that, in the general sense, he's depedestalizing these East Coast legends in this kind of tongue-in-cheek way. He's not saying they suck. He's just saying that these classics and these revered pieces of music by these revered artists are contradictory, and your ignorance of it is just like perpetuating the I guess the golden age of rap respect. Like the 90s are untouchable. You can't touch the 90s. And it's like, no, dude, look at this. Read this part. And he's just saying, everything can be criticized. I guess that's what he's saying. But I guess the significance of it is that he's an East Coast rapper and these are his roots. So he's bound to reference this kind of stuff based on that premise.
Well, I mean, I think the first significant thing is that he references the Nas lines off Illmatic, the J line. Well, the J lines are off of The Evils is off of Reasonable Doubt. It's a song off Reasonable Doubt, and the other half of the line is, or did he just skim through it? Is referencing do you fools listen to music or do you just skim through it? Which is obviously from Renegade, which is off the Blueprint, and so this is like. Reasonable Doubt is like his old classic album. Illmatic is Nas's classic album. So yeah, he's referencing directly back to the 90s, and Renegade is like thought of as like this untouchable classic song. So he's kind of aiming at sacred cows with this stuff. And as far as like the Evils, in terms of like unpacking that line specifically, like there's a whole religious theme to it when you go with the title of the Eucharist, and he makes all these religious references throughout, like one of the things that I was talking about this with you last night about how one of the things I love about these guys as solo artists and especially together as Armand Hammer is they're able to write on themes without doing like creative writing exercise songs. Like Nas, for example, just to go back since we're talking about him, he'll write like I Gave You Power, and he'll start it off like it's like I'm a gun, just in case you didn't get it, and then he'll write a song from the perspective of a gun. And he'll have some creative shit to say in there, but it's like very much like he sat down and was like, I'm going to write a creative writing exercise. Whereas Woods or Elucid, they're just going to write a dope song that's going to be about a theme. And they might not have every single line be about that theme, but the whole song is going to center around the theme. And there are going to be potent lines that call the lines you're really going to remember are going to call back to that theme. And I feel like this song is this verse is a great example of that. Like the Roman lions, the references to Jay and Mace, and ending on a Shine punchline, like it's all relates back to religion. And yeah, the Evils line I feel like is you're kind of referencing Jay's place in the world right now in terms of like he's a kind of a puppet for the NFL, and he also has like this true or not definitely like embellished sort of reputation as being sold out to the Illuminati, the devils and stuff.
Oh.
And yeah, so I feel like it's kind of a like side reference to that, and so where he's at in the world. So I feel like it's kind of it's like there are layers to that line. Kind of like I took the shine to him and I turned Jewish. It's like that's a double meaning line too. It's just like just kind of a bragging line, but it's also shine turned Jewish. Like that's what happened to him, and it's kind of like Mace turned religious too. He references that earlier, so he's managed to. And Shine was a Biggie imitator. You mentioned Shine, you mentioned Biggie, you mentioned Shine after you're kind of invoking Biggie. You just mentioned Jay, and you mentioned Mace before. Again, this all ties into the '90s theme you're talking about. So the song just like kind of wraps in on itself over and over. It's fucking brilliant.
That's a really brilliant interpretation. I think Woods is definitely, he always displays his East Coast lineage knowledge, especially with the Raekwon references, Ghostface references, Cameron, Dipset, you name it. He knows all that shit, man.
Yeah, and just like, I mean, he even has a fucking, I didn't even notice the aloof Posneus reference on here. Like, I think I noticed it when I listened to it, but reading it, like, first of all, that just like the fucking just reading aloof Posneus, like that's such a great just like little two-piece right there, and that's very much like a Doom line too, like something.
uh,
But on
yeah.
the social tip too, like he also has the one line on here: "Black is beautiful, brother, but it ain't super glue." Which that line is fucking. There's a lot in that line, and right before it, the line that gives it context: "Negroes say, let's stick together, then make funny moves."
Ooh, Jesus Christ, man. Come on. That's so
Yeah,
fucking ridiculous. You could so admittedly, and I'm kind of ashamed of this. I'm so ashamed of it that I actually changed my Rap Genius name from Jurmainson to whatever the fuck. So no one would know it was me. But I've made countless interpretations on Roman and Paraffin, and I've gotten upvotes for them. And whenever I log in on Rap Genius and I see upvotes for like, you know, rehearsed with Ornette, my soul dies inside. Um, and I say that because if I really wanted to, if I got paid for it, I would write an entire essay on that line about the Negroes say let's sit together, make funny moves, and black is beautiful, brother, but it ain't super glue. I mean that it's only commentary on the origin of African Americans and the fact that the systemic and institutionalized racism and the ideals propagated by white supremacy that have instilled themselves within the black community over the last maybe a century and a half since we've been free kind of has been toxic. The immigration of Africans, Jamaicans, Dominicans, Cubans, basically any Afro Latino community or any Caribbean dark skinned folks trying to integrate themselves into America has been problematic for African Americans. African Americans are mainly from West Africa, and we have no idea where from. But then when you take the Caribbean, the South American blacks, basically the swimming blacks is what they call them, like blacks that can swim. You take them, you take Dominicans, you take Jamaicans, basically all of us, and put us in the same group. Africans, actual Nigerians, we don't get along with each other. It's all this cultural discourse. And we have Dominicans playing baseball that are darker than me, claiming they're not black, and they deny it. Dominicans can claim they're not black. They speak Spanish. It's all really fucked up and confusing. Honestly, it's hard for me to even explain this on the podcast. But to me, that line just says that there's this discussion among black folks, I guess since forever, that we're basically perpetuating our own oppression, and that's up for debate, whatever. But
well,
even
isn't
if
that the
you
whole crabs in a bucket idea? I forget who came up with that. I forget. Wasn't that Dubois or something? Crabs in a bucket, I guess, pulling each other down.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't want to call it victim blaming. It's more of just like, I guess, black empowerment. That the reason why we're having trouble with ourselves is that we just can't. There's no unity, and we're all separated. We're all in categories. And being in America is not helping that either, though. By the way, so being Americans categorize us all they want, especially whites. So I'm not blaming blacks for that shit. But that line, those lines, plural, are really powerful to me. And it's only 2 lines. It's not even the whole song. It's crazy.
No. The thing is, that song just contains multitudes and every other like little couplet that he comes up with. There's so much like fucking Christianity is cultural appropriation papers.
Man,
like fucking
that's
A, dude.
that's
A.
fucking ridiculous.
That's not even fair that he comes up with that shit. That's
That's
one
not
line
even fair.
of whole fucking albums. Like seriously. And he has like a little one-liner earlier in the song about the Pyrex Violent, the group home live-in proof. Just that's like a little fucking like DJ Premier, like little double entendre thing. That's fucking like more clever, like just like a little clever punchline. Just everything about the song, it ties in so many themes. And the song is a minute and a half long. And the beat too. Like, do we have a production credit? I know who produced on it, but I don't know who produced what exactly. I just know
it says Messiah Music produced
we
this song.
Messiah Music. Yeah, Messiah Music's great. He's like Messiah Music and August Fanon are like the secret weapons of Armand Hammer.
Yep, it's known and elusive sometimes.
He didn't produce anything on this one though.
He didn't. He didn't produce anything on here. No.
He said he saved his shit for his solo album, so there is an elusive.
So, okay, all right.
Looking forward to that shit. But yeah, I cannot say enough good things about this song. The way he comes in, the transit, like this is a good way to transition into talking about Ramses, because the transition out of Ramses into this song is one of my favorite moments on the album. Like the little fade out and the way it fades into Woods just kind of morosely comes up with the line about his mom saying the thing about the bad penny. Just so good.
It's the same thing with Rome with Barbarians and what's the last song called?
On Rome,
Barbarians and Overseas. It's the same exact thing happens. Barbarians happens is a really big long song, and in Overseas, Billy Woods comes in and the beat fades out and goes into Overseas, and then it's just Billy Woods rambling for a minute, and then the album fades out. It's the same thing on Rome, and I'm just like, this formula works a lot for this group. I'm noticing.
Yeah, it's like it's a formula, but it doesn't feel formulaic. Like they have
not really
back to. Like they don't feel like they're just coming up with a boilerplate they repeat every time out. So, but yeah, we need to talk about Ramses because it has the best verse on the album, and it's not by Earl Sweatshirt. Although I do like Earl's verse. I think it's a bold choice that he goes so brief with it, and that he definitely does very much like it's as fucking narcotic as anything on some rap songs. It's shout out to Diction for the term zombie rap, because that's absolutely the flow that Earl runs with on here. But he doesn't waste a word. It fits the content fits the song perfectly. But Elucid fucking owns this song. Elucid kills this song so hard.
Yeah. I don't know. Elucid can shift up a lot, and it's really strange in how he's able to just change the way he wants to rap, because this verse seems very conversationalist. It just seems like everything he's saying, he's not being cryptic anymore. Everything he's saying, I think one of the most powerful lines is the very first line when he says, "Never learned how to whistle, still can't do the moonwalk." So it's almost as if he's chronicling his life. He's trying to find the milestones of most Americans, and he's saying, "I never learned how to fly a kite." You know, just like the really innocuous stuff that is just like, well, this is really important to him because he said it, so it must be important. But it's kind of just like, in a way, setting, I guess, painting a picture for his life, because then he talks about going on a date with his girl at some point. I forgot what he said about it. Hold on one second. Says, "Got a sitter, made a date. Where we at is the place of the Most High." That is some beautiful black love right there, my friends. That is some.
Before that, I just relearned escape, hands on my lady's waist. Right there. Like, he just fucking pinpoints it. Like, but there are so many, like, single lines on this that, again, just carry so much weight on them. My favorite is when he quotes Ghostface from Apollo Kids, "Catch Me in the Corner Not Speaking," but then he flips it, but not in the way that he flips the Jay and Nas lines. And also, this makes me want to call back to something that Billy does in the very beginning, but I'll get back to that after this. He says, "Catch me in the corner not speaking doesn't mean I don't have much to say." So he quotes the song, but it's like, you know, "Catch me in the corner not speaking," a comment on himself, but that doesn't mean I don't have much to say. And then he uses that to explain his personality. "I bet you can't tell when I'm tweaking. My anxiety don't look like yours." And it's like he's explaining how he lives his life now, how he's learned to cope with the world, which I think is a big theme of this album, is that it's not like the other two albums were all about mounting anxiety and chaos. And you get that still on the edges of this album. They're still commenting on it. But personally, I feel like this is how they've learned to cope and process and digest and relate.
Yeah, I think all you said is true, and what's also true is that Elucid is just a guy, and I think this humbleness he's displaying is really powerful to me, because when I heard this verse, I was able to picture myself in the way I move around where I'm at. Um, Me and Lucid are kind of similar in the way we're kind of big black dudes. Um, I think I'm taller than him, but whatever, whatever. It's the same experience. I don't move the same way I do. It depends on where I'm at, but I move different ways, man. Because despite my anxiety despite the anxiety I have about being a black guy and being a possible threat to someone else, I don't show it a lot. And when I do show it, it's dangerous to show it anyway because you may look more dangerous because you look afraid and you're big, so you look scary even though you're afraid. Kind of like how Questlove made a commentary on him being in an elevator with a white woman. Questlove is a big motherfucker, man. He has a big afro. I mean, I know what's going on.
And yet Questlove is like, the house band for Jimmy Fallon. He's like the least, like, if you know who Questlove is, he is probably the least threatening black dude you could be in an elevator with from that scared white woman's perspective. But if she doesn't know who he is and she just sees a big black dude, she just sees a big black dude. So it's still scary to be in that, but like you're still perceived as a threat in that position.
Right.
So it's.
And he's in New York. I don't live in New York. New York's population density is really high. So I got some more stuff about this line. I want to just say things that I caught from this line. He says, immaterial to material, damn cuz. And then he says, all Cash App donations go towards my Gold Fang Fund.
I love that line.
He says, go ahead.
No, just the way he follows up with my appreciation for your participation. That's just a nice little, the way he adds that in. I like that shit. Like, just with his flow.
Yeah.
Like, that line doesn't really, like, mean too much to, like, the context of the verse. It just sounds nice. I just like that. But then the next line, overstanding no such thing as spare change, that means a lot, actually.
That was one of my lines I was going to say. So this line is just like, dude, spare change? All change is valuable. It's fucking change. Give me that shit. If you see a nickel on the ground, that's a fucking nickel. It's not spare change. I guess this is what he's saying is that, like, dude, I'm struggling out here, man. Like, the spare change, what are you talking about? You know what I'm saying?
No, I totally understand what you're saying. There's just so much vivid imagery on this one. My conjure tongue strong. Like, and when you're talking about the way he changes, the way he raps on the song, the way he raps on this verse gets much more intense as it goes, and he kind of ends it on like a more spoken word poetry sort of vibe where or at least like I'm trying to think of a good rap analog for it, because he definitely just kind of,
he does some AC Alone shit at the end, sure.
Yeah. But I think the lines are they all tie everything together in a more abstract, poetic way. Like, he starts off direct and he ends abstract, I would say.
When he says summers, winters, starting later, ending faster. I mean, that's, everybody knows what he's talking about.
But then babble question, chaos answered, wave reflected all direction. That's kind of abstract poetry.
That's totally abstract, yeah.
So yeah, he goes from one extreme to the other, but he manages to, again, like, I feel like you're right that he is coming up with more relatable stuff than he had in the past. But it also does have one foot in, like you were talking about, his solo stuff, like Save Yourself, mainly. I'm getting a lot of Save Yourself vibes off some of his verses here. And in terms of the content, although it's definitely matured a lot from that time because he's in a different place in his life and he's gotten even better somehow as a rapper. Like, I feel like his rap performance is the bit, like, I already knew going into this that Woods was probably the best rapper alive right now, or top 3 at that, like, Woods, Makami, Earl Sweatshirt, probably. And so that's the one disappointment of the album, by the way, is no Makami verse. Kind of expected a Makami verse.
I don't think you care about us going off topic. I want to say that you know that song Windhoek on Terror Management?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So I made a commentary on Windhoek on another forum, and I think Makami and Billy Woods are both very culturally the same. They're both very, in terms of rap persona, they both blindfold their faces. They both obscure their faces. They're both like black immigrants They both have ancestry from different black countries, like Haiti. Is Billy Woods Jamaican?
I thought he was West African.
He's West African.
I think, but I'm calling on like an old Passion of the Weiss interview for that. I'm not 100%. Like but yeah, his dad is. I'm pretty sure his dad's West African at the very least. So
okay, so on Windhoek, the way that Makami raps on that song is, it just sounds like two people that are really rapping in weird ways, but they both sound the same on the song. But Windhoek, if nothing else, Windhoek convinced me that Billy Woods is just something else. And the reason why I say that is because at the end of Windhoek, he said he makes like 4 references and they're fucking nonstop. He won't fucking stop. Like, dude, we get it. Like, he says, Savion Glover when I'm counting. What? Savion Glover when I'm counting? He says, Edward Gorey in public housing, the town shit Robert Townsend. Does anyone know who Robert Townsend is? Hello? Like, come on, man. Like, it's just, when I heard that song, I was just like, dude, Billy Woods is just, I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't understand how he's this good.
Yeah, the way he throws. The thing about Woods is Woods shares a quality with Black Thought where he can make a reference, and you don't need to know the reference to know that it's dope. But then when you get the reference, it makes it 10 times better. Like, because the reference always makes sense. He's never somebody to make a reference just because it sounds good, but it does sound good. Like, he'll make a reference because it sounds good in terms of the rap, so you don't need to know it, so the song still works. But the reference itself works on a deeper level too.
Yeah.
Like, he knows how to make the song work on multiple levels. That's why he's such a fucking brilliant writer. And that's kind of why with Woods, Today I Wrote Nothing is often my favorite album of his, because it's his most writerly album. Because it was him just like dealing with writer's blocks, so he just came up with a bunch of fucking concepts. And of course, if you listen to this podcast, you know it's my favorite album, like can be my favorite album of his, because our opening music comes from that album.
I don't know if I knew that, but that's my favorite album too, for different reasons though, not for the same reasons.
Why is it your favorite of his?
Because, okay, so first of all, it's a bunch of 1 minute and 30-second songs about nothing, right? And then there's like 3 Armand Hammer songs on the album, and African Dodger is like a top 10 Armand Hammer song that isn't even from an Armand Hammer album. And then the entire album is a bunch of Def Jux, Victor Vaughn era beats that loop over and over with Billy Woods rapping over it. How could you not make this his best work? Like, it's just, to me, it just scratches all of my itches. Everything that I like about abstract rap is on that album. It's just like an anthology of Def Jux, Victor Vaughn, Cannibal Ox type shit, and Mad Lib and weird loopy shit, and a bunch of slow short songs with a bunch of doom rapping and Billy Woods brilliance, and the Wire references. It's so good. And then Lucid comes in and kills the songs he's on. I just don't know what to say about it. It's just like,
well, the pass off in the very first track is probably the second best MC pass off of all time, behind the first track of the Canox album. I would say where Calisthenics in the Park bit. Because my favorite MC pass off of all time is on Cold Vein, where it's, and it cracks in the basement, crackhead standard. Like, that's the best MC pass off of all time. But
that's Iron Galaxy, right?
Galaxy, yeah. Fuck 501 108 mics. I mean,
you can definitely tell that Billy Woods rapped with these niggas based on just that one song. If you asked me to listen to Iron Galaxy without knowing who Cannibal Ox was, but knowing who Billy Woods was, I would just be like, this sounds like Billy Woods to me. And then when I go back to Billy Woods' like second album, it's all Cannibal Ox dudes on there.
Yeah, it's Vordal, and I mean, I don't think he did very much with Vast, but he did a lot of shit with Vordal and not Cage. Who the hell's the other dude? But yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Vast Air.
Well, no, he didn't do too much with Vast. I was saying
just Vordal Omega.
Mostly Vordal, yeah.
Yeah.
because he has that best of, what's it called? I'm gonna look it up on his page now. That pretty much captured Cowardly Threats and Hideous Cruelty, the best of Billy Woods, which is like the best shit that he did prior to History Will Absolve Me, and that's pretty much as good as any of his other albums. Like, it's not like he's not as polished, and the beats are not as great as he would get from History onward, but it's still fucking good. It's long as shit. But he's always crap. No, it's a best of called Cowardly Threats and Hideous Cruelty, the best of Billy Woods.
Okay. Yeah, I see it.
And I think it's got shit from Camouflage and the Chalice on it, and like Lucy's. It's got a lot of Bortle Mega stuff on there. And I mean, it's not as good as History or Dour Candy or any of that stuff, but it's close. And it's worth hearing for sure if anybody hasn't heard it. I mean, like, obviously my Billy listening started with Dour Candy. I mean, I think I heard History on somebody's recommendation. I wasn't really, it was an overwhelming listen at first. But I've come back to it, and it's fucking amazing. The Rock Marciano track on there is fucking incredible.
Yeah.
I was not ready for that at the time, for sure. Like, did not appreciate that. And, of course, the Armand Hammer tracks on there. But yeah, I mean, we did kind of get off topic because Billy has, like, probably an incredible discography, like, one of the best discographies. I mean, Terror Management's the one I haven't really warmed to yet, but this album makes me want to go back to it.
I don't think anything else on Terror Management really touches Windhoek besides maybe first name, last name. FNU, LNU, and that's just, I think FNU, LNU is the best song in the whole album.
I remember the first single was the one that got the video, I think, was Western Education is Forbidden. I'm like, this is cool, but it seemed a level below what he normally did.
Yeah.
And I think I heard the Pink Sifu Akai Solo, which I guess is a good way to go into talking about the Akai Solo feature and all the features, I guess. Like, are there any features that disappointed you on Shrines, or did you think everybody like fit on there? Like, I think everybody fits for sure. Like, there's nobody that's like stands out as not belonging on an Armand Hammer album. But I would say that the Milo Rap Ferrara, whatever he wants to call himself, verse is probably the weakest feature, just because it starts off really cool and then it doesn't do anything very cool beyond that. It kind of just fills time. When
you say features, do you mean choruses too?
Yeah, choruses. So you can mention Castro too, Castro and Kaya and all that.
So I think one thing I really hate about what Earl has done by accident is he's made that little that little thing very popular, and I really hate that shit. Like, in my grandmama's house, again. I hate that shit, dude. So when Akai Solo comes in, he fucking murders the song, right? And in the very last part of the song, he says, yeah. And I'm like, come on. You were so close. You were at the finish line. You just broke your fucking leg and you couldn't finish the race. What the fuck was that shit? But besides, Akai Solo really impressed me on this shit. I mean, he every single bar was fucking good. I think the Quelle Chris feature is really cool. I think
great, and I didn't really. The thing about Quelle was I was not super impressed with his verse on the Preservation album, because Quelle's hit and miss with me. Like, I wasn't super into his solo shit until he did the album with Gene, and then the album after that was Guns. Guns was really fucking good. So those two got me, and then I went back to the one before the album with Gene, and I think those work together as a trilogy. So, but I think overall on a feature, he definitely does his own thing on every feature, and it sometimes doesn't work for me. It works on Frida. Frida's like top 5 songs on the album for sure.
His Microdose verses. You like his Microdose verse?
Yeah, no, I think he's great on Macrodose too. So I think he really works well with Armand Hammer. And there's a funny anecdote about on the Call Out Culture podcast where they talk about how I guess Quelle goes around the city writing his rhymes like Walt Whitman is how Billy Woods describes it. That he's just like, it's funnier when Woods says it.
What does that mean?
That he just literally just doesn't, like, he doesn't sit down and write his shit. He literally just goes around to get inspired and just writes his shit on the fly like Walt Whitman would, I guess.
Interesting.
So, and that's how he, like, ran it. Like, I guess that's how he ended up doing his verse on the album. He just showed up and was like, oh, I just walked by your place. Want me to do a verse? So,
wow.
That verse happened.
The flow was good. I like the flow on that verse, man.
Oh, no, he's got a great flow. Like,
I slip, I slide, I lift. I was fucking with that shit, man. That shit knocks.
Quelle's got a great like melodic sense to his shit. I think that's a lot of what works about on Guns. Like Guns is a weird fucking album in that way. Like he definitely comes up with like very sing-songy songs on that album. They're catchy but dark. And I haven't come back to that album as much as I would like, but whenever I listen to it, I really like it. That also has another great Makami feature on it. I'm trying to remember the name of the track, but something about Coke.
That's one of Mox Hami's best features on that
Wild
Guns album.
Thanks. Yeah, that's fucking great.
When he raps over the piano loop, that piano loop is really good.
So, yeah, that's definitely, like, I guess, yeah, Quelle would probably be like the connective tissue between Mock and Armand Hammer. So, I guess that's the one thing I would wish for in the next Armand Hammer album. You never predict who they're going to put on there, but I would definitely want like a Makami feature. So that probably means we're going to get a Fahim feature instead. Positive rap Fahim feature.
Maybe. I think Makami's verse on Rome is pretty underrated, and it's pretty quick too. It's a pretty short verse, but a lot happens in that verse. I want to say that the No Sage's chorus on Leopards is really good. I really like his chorus on that.
I mean, No Sage's chorus on Leopards is good. Castro's chorus on Pommel Horse is really good. Although after the Shrapnel album, I kind of wish we got a Castro verse. But I mean, everybody they use for for chorus, for hooks and stuff on here, I think are really good choices. Like Sifu, Kaya, Castro. Everybody fits the vibe. And I think it's interesting that in the first half they mainly use features for hooks, and then on the second half they mainly use them for verses. And you have More Mother, who kind of just does like something in between, like poetry / spoken word / whatever. Hard to classify what she does.
I think More Mother kind of reminded me of Sketch 185 on.
That's a good comparison.
Yeah.
Although it's like more professional because obviously More Mother has like a lot more experience. Whereas the thing about the Sketch 185 verse, that kind of reminded me of Knock on I Don't Like Shit on DNA, where it was like an unprofessional verse. That's what made it so raw, where it felt like it was somebody just like spitting the one verse they would ever spit in their life.
Ever in their life, huh?
Yeah.
I fuck with it. Yeah, I fuck with it.
So that's Castro doing the another thing I'm stealing from the Co-op Culture podcast was he's the one who does the lasers on King Tubby, all the dub lasers. He's doing those live in studio.
I heard that part on the podcast. I heard that little snippet of the podcast about the King Tubby and the DJ.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard about that part.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice little touch that they decided if you're going to do a song about like name King Tubby with that beat that you have to have like live dub lasers in the studio. Yeah, I think production wise, it's probably the most varied thing they've done. It's definitely the brightest. I mean, it has dark moments. Like around Leopards, it starts getting dark and it doesn't really let up after that. Although I feel like, again, I don't know, you could argue Ramsey's either way in terms of tone. Like it's a proud song, but it's also a dark song.
Yeah.
And the beat changes repeatedly. Like you can never nail down the tone of that song, and I think that's intentional.
I think Dead Car suffers from that formula, though. I think Dead Car is the only time where I think it kind of trivializes the impact of the song when it feels like everything it's floaty. Milo comes in, I'm just like, all right, Bitcoin, and then it's over, and then Elusa comes in and the beat changes, and I'm just like, okay. I don't know what to think. Yeah, I don't know what to think about this.
Yeah, the Milo part just kind of feels a little like fill-in time to me, and it does, like you said, stifle the momentum somewhat. I feel that I have not listened to Fantano's review of it, but I'm sure he'll say that it's probably not political because they didn't mention Donald Trump or Black Lives Matter on it. Yeah, there's nothing political about like Elucid's verse on Slewfoot or anything, which is probably the second or third best verse on here. Again, like Elucid, just that's a verse that shouldn't require explanation for people, but probably will.
So on Slewfoot, there's a line on that song that's actually used on furtive movements, and the line is most young kings get their heads chopped. The same line is used on BET on Further Movements. I just heard the song, by the way. BET.
Oh yeah, that's a great song with like the laugh track on the back and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I got some more lines for Slewfoot. So wait, Slewfoot, the beat, which one is it? I get Slewfoot and King Tubby confused. Okay, so Slewfoot,
Slewfoot's the one that has Billy Woods dropping a lot of names on his verse.
so I think Billy Woods
Instant replay back into the Jack Kennedy, which is like I think a great line because it's like obviously he's referencing the Kennedy assassination, which is a great way to say, which is probably the rawest way I've ever heard for somebody to say rewind it back on a verse ever.
Right. It has the Marshawn Lynch quote on there, which I totally forgot about until now.
Yeah, breaks in. I didn't know that was Marshawn Lynch until fucking I read the Rap Genius right now. I did not know that was Marshawn Lynch.
I knew it was Marshawn Lynch when he said chicken, because that was a very, very distinct part of the entire quote. Don't take care of y'all chicken. When I heard that, oh, that's Marshawn Lynch. Okay.
Yeah, chicken is a recurring theme on the album. They cover that on the Car Culture thing, which Lucid kind of chalked up to they just really like chicken. But I think and yeah, I mean, they were also ahead of their time with like the Tiger stuff too, because I guess that kind of references Tiger King. But this definitely all, you know, they put this shit together before Tiger King happened. So, and
so you know the "Take Chicken" quote that's quoted on what song is it quoted on?
When I'm hungry, you know, I'm gonna go get some, like, what happens when you're hungry? You get scared.
No, I'm saying what song was that on?
The chicken thing. I think that's was that on Pommel Horse? The very end. Oh yeah, it's like, so if I got hungry, did you get scared? If that shit got hungry, then I had to go get Toad Chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the end of Pommel Horse.
So I went and watched the entire video where the quote is from, and the guy asked him, why is there a tiger in your house? And the guy says that, well, you got people holding AKs in their house and no one cares about that. So why should you care about me having a tiger in my house? It's only a commentary on how we're able to have so much artillery and no one cares about it.
That's a fucking point. I hadn't even thought about that shit.
That's kind of what I got from the album cover. So without any context, the album cover made me think about the fact that the tiger symbolizes the general unrest of people in public housing, the general unrest of people in poverty, and how they're just like they're ridden with mental illness and anxiety, and they're in food deserts. They're fucking eating Cheetos every day. They can't pay rent. They're just unhealthy in every single facet. Mentally, emotionally, physically, they're just fucked. Like they're just like they're fucking they're tired of this shit. And they're like tigers. They're caged. They're not animals. They're just caged and they're tired of everybody's shit. So when the cop sees the tiger inside the public housing in the window, it's just like, we're not the same. We're not the same thing. You're an enforcer of I guess impunity, and I'm just the result of what you've created. Is what I got from that picture, from the album cover.
I think that's an excellent interpretation. And I'm reading the lyrics right now on Slewfoot, where it's talking about the military of law and order broke dawn, a few moments of belongings, and it works so perfectly with the image on the cover and your interpretation. But to take it back to Slewfoot or whatever, the Woods verse goes back to what I was talking about, how they have like a theme and they explore it. Like the names on there that I didn't know are all like football players who died basically due to like CTE and all. Like Chris Henry, just to name. He fell out of a moving truck. He had CTE during his odd. Yeah, they're all people who died due to CTE. So that's definitely like a recurring theme on the song that I had. And again, that's like a whole thing about Woods is like he'll have like a surface level to his verse and then like an undercurrent to his verse that you can unpack if you want to.
Do you think that this elusive line relates to those football players? So he mentions CTE and football players, right? So yeah. Elucid says it'll be a new nigga next year. They won't miss you. Now,
and then the beat has a little drop when he says that too.
Yeah. Do you think he's talking about how, I guess, football players are enslaved and they're just used for their athletic ability, and then when they get CTE, no one cares. And the next guy comes in, he gets CTE, no one cares. And the next guy comes in and makes money and plays football. You can't kneel, you can't be Kaepernick, you can't make any political statements. Just play football, and if you get CTE, we don't give a fuck. Just play football. We don't care about your actual well-being. We just want your athletic ability. And that's just more. That's even more. That just rings so far. Of course.
Well, and he has the line about trapped with no timeouts left, which has obvious, sports connotations to it. Fab Five Weber, not Freddy, which I don't know which the Weber, not Freddy means. I know Fab Five Freddy is like a rap reference, I'm pretty sure, or a movie reference. I know Fab Five Freddy as a name, but then he has the line about death cult America encroaching nowness. And you can definitely look at the NFL as a death cult of a way. It's like beat your brains in until you die for the entertainment.
That's fucking shit. That's fucked up. That's so fucked up.
Right? Shit. Yeah, that's a dark ass song, and it's way darker now. The more I look at it, the darker it gets. I mean, I don't like fucking football. Like, I always found football boring as a kid anyway, so it's like it wasn't hard for me to not watch it anymore, to give up. Like, it was my least favorite of the big four sports, but yeah, football's fucking gross. So, and out of all the sports, it definitely has the most modern slave auction-y qualities to it with like the draft, I would say.
Yeah.
So, oh shit, the fucking what song am I looking at now? There's a lot. King Tubby has a line about hiding places on it. I didn't notice that.
What is it?
Hiding places was inside my mind's labyrinths and mazes. First of all, that's a fucking killer line, and that's definitely like an intentional callback. I can't believe I didn't notice that.
That's a very on the nose callback that no one should be able to not understand. Like, you shouldn't have trouble with this one.
And like that. Seriously, like I was too busy being stuck on the beginning where he makes like a whole like a little 6-bar thing like referencing David Foster Wallace and the This Is Water speech, which is super brilliant and like really involved. Like, I got that, but I didn't get the thing where he's calling back to an album that he just released. That was like my favorite album of the last year. So I was definitely not seeing the forest for the trees on that one. King Tubby is like we talked about it earlier, but it's worth mentioning because it was my first favorite song on the album. It's still one of my favorite songs on the album. I think it's when the album really kicks into starts kicking you in the face pretty much, both instrumentally and lyrically. Like, it's when the album stops being like the optimism starts fading from the album, really. Like, you get it from because they said it's Lee Perry. It's Tubby on the intro. Tubby's talking on it, but the beat actually samples Lee Perry, and Woods apologizes for that on the show because apparently they had beef. So he's like, Tubby wouldn't be cool with us sampling a Lee Perry song with a song named after him. But he has a really great religious reference to, which I guess is like kind of sort of foreshadowing that he'll do a song called The Eucharist at the end about makeshift transubstantiation, cup or chalice, handshaking, pock blood, where transubstantiation is the term for what happens to Christ's blood in the Catholic Mass when his blood becomes wine. So, yeah, he's kind of talking about Pac being Jesus. So it's another old rapper reference. And then he turns into like a video game reference about side-scrolling 8-bit bullet hells, which I don't know how the fuck we got there, but it's cool.
Well, I want to come back to the song really quick after this segue, but the Pac blood reference and the 90s rappers reference deconstructing the untouchable shield of 90s rap. The same line is brought up in War Stories, where Billy Woods he says I was depressed watching old men bicker over musty old beef from '96. So what I thought about was the Biggie and Pac beef. I don't know if it happened in '96, but it's just more reminiscent of like how '90s people are still talking about this shit. He says over musty old beef. He called it musty and old.
Musty, adjective. That's one of the things about Woods is he has like some really like on point adjectives for shit. And musty is a great. Well, that song kind of reminded me of actually the Danny Brown off of Old side, the first song of side B, dope song where he tells like one last drug story and he's like, I'm sick of all these rappers with their 10-year-old stories. And I kind of got that vibe off of it. But I think Woods is not just talking about rappers talking about old shit. I think he's also talking about fans obsessed with old shit.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Like in a barbershop, for example.
Yeah.
You go to any barbershop, they're still talking about this bullshit.
Like, yeah. And you were saying the beef, like, yeah, the beef predates that, but I think 96 is when Pac died, 97 is when Biggie died. But it's like, yeah, 20 years ago. Move the fuck on at this point. And yeah, I think he does a lot. Like, there are a lot of lines here where he's just kind of deconstructing and just kind of removing these idols from their glass cases, basically. I mean, like, they're just fucking people. Like, it goes back to that Elucid line about where it's like he quotes Nas, no idea is original, that's wisdom from a fool. He's kind of like, they have great lines, they have great moments, but they're not infallible.
Absolutely.
They're all just people. So
I got a question for you for King Tubby, though. I want to make a comment and ask you a question. So there's a line I really like in this Woods verse where he says, Tamarine Daiquiri, I'm no tough guy, I'm a dandy. And he's saying this over this really vicious beat. He's rhyming angry. And he says, I'm no tough guy. But he sounds mad when he says it. And I'm just like, dude, this guy is the hardest soft guy I've ever heard. Really interesting dichotomy there. My question for you, though, is what the fuck did he mean when he says graceful as third generation bomb makers?
Graceful as third generation. Well, first of all, Tamarind Daiquiri, I think, is a great line because the song is called King Tubby, and when I was staying in Jamaica on the way to my honeymoon, that was the type of mixed drinks they made. They made shit with tamarind. So he's referencing a local drink. So that's just kind of like, that's just a cool little reference. As far as graceful as third generation bomb makers, I think the bomb makers line is supposed to be kind of referencing like the side scrolling 8-bit bullet hell. Like, that's calling back to that. But I think that the idea is that if you're somebody who's in the weapons making business, you're an old rich white guy, and you've got to be graceful and move in certain social circles. Like, the people who actually make the bombs aren't like scrappers. They're not out there in the dirt.
Interesting.
That's my immediate interpretation. It's like old money makes the weapons, and the death gives them their old money.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
That's just my interpretation. I could be completely the fuck off. Dancers' bodies weave the wires. That's a great. There's so many great images on this, dude. I love Wood's verse. I mean, I love both their verses on this. I mean, I love the way the song comes together too, and the way.
The King Tubby is just a D-Tall sequel. It's the same exact formula, the same thing. Really big vocal sample, no drums, looping over and over again, and just endless rambling. D-Tall is exactly the same. It's exactly the same as King Tubby. It's the same song, in my opinion. And that's why I like it so much. Because D-Tall is just like, I don't know, man. D-Tall is fucking gross. I heard King Tubby. I'm like, yeah, that's that D-Tall formula, boy. Yeah, boy. No drums on this shit. Just go in. You know what I'm saying?
And it's interesting because this is Nicholas Craven, who I don't think has done a beat for them before. And this is way weirder than a lot of Nicholas Craven beats. Because Nicholas Craven, I generally think of as kind of like a second string, like Griselda Light producer. Like, he kind of comes up with like the sort of shit that's like,
I was thinking the same exact thing.
Derringer for people who can't afford Derringer, or like they want.
Yeah, it's true.
So this is like the weirdest beat I've heard from him, but it fucking works on so many levels. It's dirty as shit. And you're right, like it's structured, but it's structured in a formless way, like D-Tall. Especially Elucid's verse. Elucid's verse is rambling as fuck, but it's just like, I love that out of Elucid verses. Like, I mean, again, I know that it's a very small niche to love that shit, but it's like, I've heard, like, I mean, I listen to like Bernadette and shit. Like, I have like a very large tolerance for. And I'm pretty sure Bernadette has like one Elucid verse on it in like 12 minutes. So
Before we get to his verse, I got one more Woods line that I want to talk about. He says, "Catch a body after tampering with the body camera." Moment of silence. I mean, it's just. Go ahead.
That's incredible, and I also like the line afterwards that he follows it up with. It's a cancer. It's a mass in the abdomen. It's a tuned mass damper. Old man Barnum's super scammers. First of all, that's doom right there. Cancer, mass in the abdomen, mass damper, old man Barnum, super scammers. That's doom flow. That's a doom.
You
case.
say, look, doom would be like adjective, word, and then some guy you don't know about, and then more fucking adjectives. That's what it is, bro. That's that doom shit. But Billy Woods is so brilliant at this point. Like, I just gotta give him credit. Like he even after he said that he's heavily inspired by doom, he still has his own merit, dude. It's crazy.
And honestly, just unpacking the fuck out of this line, you have lead pipe, X-ray, body camera, cancer, mass in the abdomen. Like, that's all the same imagery. Lead to X-ray, X-ray to body camera, X-ray to cancer, cancer to mass in the abdomen. All the same fucking imagery. He's playing off the same type of imagery and riffing off of it for like 8 bars, just like spinning the same shit. That's fucking remarkable. Like,
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Was the last line a subtle brag where he says, "King Tubby, wherever I'm at, that's a hit factory"?
Yeah, I think he's bragging on that, and that's a reference to, I guess, yeah, Tubby's studio was known as the Hit Factory.
Okay.
Because the versions he put out were like, if you did a version with Tubby of your song, because like he would do the dub versions of shit, it would be a hit. So yeah, Tubby's studio was known as the Hit Factory.
Luce's verse is a lot longer than I remember. Just reading it is just so long. So I have a line that I want to ask you about again on Luce's verse, where he says, "Seen it, shiny chrome dipped in polish, handsome gun, a mnemonic picture so you frame the logic. Your mind the greatest weapon, but your heart the biggest target." So all that seems like he's talking about a gun the entire time, right? Shiny chrome dipped in polish.
Right. Yeah, but then that last line, well, if you think of it as a whole little mini poem there from the Yup, I Seen It to Marksman, like, because he's talking about himself like he's the marksman. But the big key, I think the key to it is your mind the greatest weapon, but your heart the biggest target. It's like the gun, you're turning the gun on yourself.
Is it so? So when you just said the line, when you said your mind the greatest weapon, your heart the biggest target. This is very, very. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm working with the line right now. It's like, your mind the greatest weapon. Is your mind the gun? Like, is your mind the handsome gun, and your heart's the biggest target? You're your own worst enemy. Your thoughts are attacking your logic is attacking your emotion, maybe.
Yes, I think that's true, and I think it's also a commentary on capitalism. But this is I don't think it's a stretch, because Lucid is very capitalism heavy. So is Billy Woods. When I hear about your heart being the biggest target, I think it's saying that corporations and the media and the news can easily manipulate you by using your heart, using your emotions, and then that manipulation then makes it so your mind is influenced to do something, basically hurting yourself. Self-sabotage. We want you to self-sabotage, and we're going to do it. We're going to achieve this goal by emotionally manipulating you through anything we can: food, marketing, advertisements, the news, music. And then your mind can easily say, "Nope, that I don't buy it." But what if your mind doesn't say that? What if your mind is easily manipulated, and then your mind becomes your greatest weapon? Because your mind, that's your mind. You can do whatever you want. And your mind controls your body. So if your mind is the greatest weapon, it's just like, it can either hurt you or hurt something else. But it's that powerful that it can do both equally. Both are equally achievable. That's what I'm getting from it.
I mean, I feel, yeah, I think that's a good way to go with it. I'm trying to figure out how the song eventually, because I mean, after that, like, I feel like he makes the point he's trying to make, or at least comes up with something that he wants the listener to absorb. And then the line, I'm giant, no weapon form shall triumph. They left us out to dry. I recombined like I designed it. That's kind of saying, like, he's kind of rejecting the idea of any weapon, period. He's saying he's bigger than any weapon they could come up with. He ends up, like, eventually the song becomes an like you said, that this is like very capitalist critical. I think it is too. Cowards in high places refute this world is ours. They liars only trusted through proven truth the survivors. Like, it eventually becomes a criticism of, like, it's a survivor. It's like a street level criticism of those in power. So I think that your analysis definitely holds water in terms of those lines. And that's probably why, because I was trying to figure out how he gets to eventually coming together with like the Rastafarian reggae imagery at the end, where he starts talking about John, Zion, and stuff. But I feel like that's kind of where he's coming from there. Like, these capitalists, like the people in power, the businessmen, the oligarchs, whatever, those are false idols. And this is a song for people to unite under what's really important. Like, it's ultimately a call for unity for the people, and as opposed to, and not being ground down by society and money and false idolatry.
Yeah, that's really good, dude. It's so good. Your interpretation was so good that it directly parallels with an elusive song off of Valley of Grace. I want to hear your thoughts on this, though. You know the song?
That song, the one about the song about robot.
Not that one. Not that one. No, it's the one where he says, "It feels so heavy. I'm minding my space. We have what we need, but is it too late? What do I leave versus what do I take?" That song. So there's a line on there where he says, "That narrative just a prison you imagine I'm in."
Yeah.
That.
Well, I think that's definitely telling that you're bringing up something from Valley of Grace, because he came up with Valley of Grace after he came back from Africa, if I recall correctly.
I actually watched an interview where he talked about how when he was in Africa, he just basically recorded the album day by day while he was there. And he just did it seamlessly. Like, there was no process. He just came home, wrote a song, and then went back outside. That was it. I was like, oh, shit. Like, But yeah, your interpretation just now was fucking good as hell. Let me go back to the page for
speaking of Grace, real quick, shout out to Piano Wire, one of the best Elucid songs. Shout out to the beat on Piano Wire, which is fucking crazy. If you haven't heard Valley of Grace, that's the thing, is one of the things about the Armand Hammer stuff is I definitely feel like people who've listened to Shrines probably haven't listened to like Savior. So I'm not expecting anybody who listens to Shrines to go and listen to like fucking Bernadette or Osage or Horse Latitude, but there is certain Elucid solo stuff that I feel like you probably haven't heard if you've heard this album that you would benefit from hearing, and not trying to be like a pretentious, oh, I was a fan before you were a fan or whatever, but I would say Save Yourself and Valley of Grace are probably the two Elucid solo projects that somebody who's listening to Armand Hammer and really enjoying it would get a lot out of.
Yeah, they totally would. The only thing about Valley of Grace, though, is that Valley of Grace is not only dark lyrically, but in terms of the entire sound, the entire thing is just a decomposing body. The entire album is completely dark. That's it. The end. I mean, it's fucked up.
It's darker than Paraf. It's darker than any Armand Hammer project. It's more claustrophobic than Furtive Movements.
Yeah, for sure.
But you were going to go into something, I thought. Maybe not.
I think you know. Oh, I wanted to tell you this on SoulSeek. So, I had a little observation today, and it was a very astute observation based on my prior predictions. And my predictions were that on Radio Music, Shrines would get to about 1,500 ratings, and then people would just stop caring about the album. They will go on to whatever else. Medhane, Mike, JPEG Mafia drops a single where he's rapping in a desert. Oh, 5 out of 5, whatever. Whatever the next Brockhampton Injury Reserve, JPEG Mafia bullshit drops the next day. Whatever the fuck, right? So Shrines gets the same amount of ratings that Paraffin does, and everybody just vanishes. Like the entire party just goes away. The party's over. We're done. I'm just like, dude, what the fuck just happened, dude? Like, bro.
It has half the ratings of Paraffin, dude. It has half.
What? No, hold on, man. Hold on, bro.
The main page right now. Shrines has 1452. Paraffin has 2303.
Wow. But anyway, my point is that. Go ahead.
Rome has 610.
Man,
okay.
that's criminal, bro.
It has 180 and no reviews. And I bet I can't publish my review because it's unpublished by mod.
Whoa, what are you talking about? I thought you were good, dude.
Oh, no. Yes, I am. I can publish my shit, but if it's been unpublished by mod, that was when they took away my publishing in the first place.
Oh, okay.
If it is unpublished by mod, I have to specifically go and request that it be republished, which you know how that goes. Like
I didn't know that was even a thing.
Yeah, no, it's because they mass unpublished all my shit, even the stuff that didn't violate rules, when they were just like, oh yeah, your publishing's done. So that was like 2,000 reviews that are just like, even the ones that didn't violate it were unpublished by mod. So even though, like, yeah, I'm looking at this right now, there's nothing that violates the rules, but so yeah, there's no reviews on the furtive movements and only 180 ratings. Bullshit.
Dude, I'm looking at this Armand Hammer page, discography page. I'm looking at Race Music and Rowan. I'm just like, all these albums are equally as good to the other one. Race Music, like I just told you, on A Frog and Toad Are Friends, that song is crazy.
I mean, I think Race Music's a little under the rest just because it's a little like they. I feel like Race Music is structured a little bit like a mixtape, which is weird because they do a mixtape. They did half measures, but compared to Rome, but it's still fucking great. Like I have it at an 8. Like Frog and Toad Are Friends is great. The Rent Is Too Damn High is great. Duppy is really good, but they do Duppy way better on furtive movements.
Oh, that one's good. It has Curly Castro verse on it.
Yeah, and New Museum with Driver and Mike Eagle is really fucking good too on Race Music. So it's just like, it doesn't need to be 70 minutes. I think most of their albums, aside from this, clock in at like an hour. Shrines is like 40 minutes, 45 minutes. So this was the one time I feel like, I mean, I'm never going to complain about hearing these dudes rap for 70 minutes ever, but I think it's the one album of theirs that's a little long-winded.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is really long.
But it's still great. Like, it still doesn't deserve to only have this, like, it's not like a dramatic, like, it's not an obscure little, like, fucking, it doesn't deserve to have a third of the ratings of Paraffin. Like, come on. Fuck out of here.
So I have some questions about War Stories, and the War Stories, like I just told you, it's a song, it's a B-side from Rome, basically. The beat sounds like a B-side from Rome. Messiah Music made the beat, and then the chorus is the most Armand Hammer shit you could ever hear. The chorus is so good. It's just the classic Armand Hammer formula. I love that shit. I love it. I love War Stories, but like, well, you can go. You can talk
being
about it too.
As fuck and just being really antisocial. It's a classic antisocial Armand Hammer song, I would say.
Yeah.
We on the McNabb line already. We talked about the musty beef line, which is great. I think it has one of the two most immediately grabbing lines on the album. We'll get to the second one later because I'm sure you know which one it is. Feel it in the air like a Confederate flag. Yeah, that is just like, I mean, I don't know if anybody, I was going to say nobody could have predicted how when this dropped that would have resonated harder, but I'm sure they could have predicted that. You could have predicted that any moment anything drops, some racist, horrible shit's going to happen in this country.
There's no bad time to release an album like this.
Yeah, there isn't, because it's like, I get so sick of hearing people be surprised when this shit happen. Like, that was probably the number one, like when the George Floyd murder happened and then we have the protest and the riots, and it's like, people surprise is what really got me. Like, wait, this happens? There's a quote
that I always use for, you could use this for any century in the last 4 centuries of America. There's a quote, and the quote goes like this. It says, "Black people tried to tell y'all." That's the quote. That's the quote that I repeat over and over again. And it's unfortunate that hardened black folks know this mantra. So the feel it in the air part, forget the flag part, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
we'll get to that later. The feel it in the air part is it stings a little bit because when I remember one time I heard a podcast. It was D-Respect, Dominic Rabrin, and Mike Seatown. And Mike Seatown was talking about, this was like maybe 5 years ago, maybe even longer than that. Mike Seatown said when he goes to Alabama, he can immediately feel the shift in the air when he gets to those certain areas where houses have Confederate flags on their houses. He said, okay, I'm not going to go this way. I'm going to turn around. I just thought that I'm from Georgia, by the way. I think you know that already.
I did. Okay,
and Mike Seatown is from Conyers, hence the Seatown, right? I think that's where he's from. So the feel it in the air thing is something that I feel not only just in the South, but everywhere in America, where you can feel a shift in the air based on where you're at, and your instinct comes in. I could die in this place. This is a place where I'm basically the equivalent to a squirrel in terms of how my life is viewed and valued. And the shift in the air is almost like it's like this really strange survival instinct. But then the feel in the air part also I think about how Confederate flags flap in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
And when you feel it in the air, it's like, okay, the flag is like in the wind. It's being hung up in the sky, and it's like flapping based on the wind. And it's just like, dude, the flag flapping in the wind is just, why would you hang this flag up? It's so. This is kind of a morbid line, in my opinion. It's morbid.
I mean, whenever I see a Confederate flag, I just think that you're celebrating that you lost. You're broadcasting that you are ass hurt, basically. You're broadcasting that you lost and you can't accept that you lost. That's what I see when I see a Confederate flag. Like, it's like the same feeling I get when I see somebody who has like a failed presidential candidate's bumper sticker on their car. But there's like, obviously, it's a lot more gravity to see in Confederate flag because of like because of what it carries with it, the historical context that it carries with it is well beyond like your average presidential candidate. But still, like, from my perspective, that's what I see, is like some scared person who can't accept that they lost, who wants to try and intimidate other people with this outdated symbol. But I understand what you're saying, and yeah, it is a morbid fucking line, and I feel like looking at it in the context of the verse, it's another one of those incredibly well-written Woods verses, and I kind of want to use this as a way to kind of springboard into talking about the difference between how Woods and Elucid write, because they get into that on the Call Out Culture podcast, is how Woods he's able to write in a room with people, whereas Elucid kind of he can't write in a room with people, he just goes away and just like, because they had like, I guess, jam sessions or whatever, where they would get together with who was the producer? It was Kenny Siegel. They got together with Kenny Siegel, and Elucid would just like Siegel put on a beat, or he started messing around on the MPC, and Woods would start writing in the room, and Elucid just got up all awkward and left, and came back like an hour later with a notebook full of shit. So I think it's interesting that Woods is able to come up with this shit in a social setting, whereas Elucid has to isolate himself.
Wow, that's interesting.
Like, that's interesting. His problem. Yeah. And as Woods, like the imagery on Woods' verse, like it goes from, you have the slavery imagery, which is, by the way, what the album kicks off with. Although the main thing people will remember from the first verse is ass tastes better in the summertime, which is fucking hilarious. But still, like, there's a lot of slavery imagery on the first track, and then obviously Slewfoot kind of calls back to that, the modern slavery in the NFL, and then like this is very explicitly about slavery, like the ultimate old war story, slavery, and then he kind of takes it and transforms it into a children's story, scavenger hunts, musical chairs, and then he has like animal and nature imagery, Greyhound buses, Timberlands, their animal nature imagery that's like actually double meanings into something else. And that turns into the Confederate flag, which turns into Southern imagery, getting gassed, and trucks, mortar and pestle. It's like he kind of brings it from the past to the present in terms of a war story. So yes, he is talking about he doesn't want to hear about old beef, but he's also talking about old beef.
Wow, that's really good. I didn't think about that. The slavery connection.
Right. Like it's just kind of how he bring. It's sort of like on Today I Wrote Nothing, the one track where he is like writing about the guy who's writing about a guy who's writing about a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he kind of brings a frame in and draws you closer into the frame. He's taking you from the past and drawing you into the present. And there's like another good literary reference on here. Joseph K. When they led him to the ditch is I'm pretty sure that's like a Franz Kafka protagonist, and like every Kafka protagonist dies. I'm pretty certain. So I'm pretty sure that's like a guy who gets shot. Like I think he has to dig his own ditch. So I might be wrong on that one. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the guy from the trial. He has to dig his own ditch and he dies at the end of it. And then the line right after that, I used to think I was better than this. I was remiss. Just the way and then you get more doom rhyming too. I was like remiss, jiff, spliff, bicker, bricks. Like incredible. Just fucking incredible. And then Illusion starts it off with a Beatles reference about a gun.
What does musical chairs to a dump truck backing up mean?
Your guess is as good as mine.
So I thought so musical chairs to a dump truck backing up. It's almost saying that
scavenger hunt with the mutts out front, I thought was like dog hunting runaway slaves. I didn't get what the musical chairs to a dump truck backing up means, except that he was kind of bringing it back to modern day times.
Well, the musical chairs thing, it just makes me think about maybe being unable to beat the system. So you may think that there's an illusion that musical chairs means that you could win somehow.
Oh, you're trying to avoid a dump truck backing up. Everybody's trying to get out of the way of the garbage.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm wondering, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I like that. That's good.
That's so. Who the fuck would write that? Musical chairs to a dump truck backing up? What kind of metaphorical Aesop rock type of shit is that? I think that's some Labor Days type shit, buddy. That's a Labor Days line, my guy. For real.
Yeah. That's another thing. Have they ever done a track with Aesop? Like, I mean, I know they've done individual shit with Aesop. Like, he was on Wonderful on the Woods album. And I don't know if Elucid's ever done shit with Aesop, but I know Aesop has never been on an Armand Hammer track. Although the first track on Furtive Movements feels like just like an Aesop rock track to me. Crowns.
Oh, that song is fire, boy. That shit is so good.
That shit where he goes off at the end. He's like, blood, Ares Targaryen. Like he just
Ares Targaryen, yep. Oh man, take him off the map like Rhodesia. One phone call, my dumb ass called Lakeisha. That was so good.
Vengeance is mine, Frankenstein's creature.
Oh my god. Whole condo Rico Reefer. Just stop it. Stop.
No, that's so fucking good. Yeah.
I wanted to read something for you. There's a set of tweets that Elucid and Backwood Studios Twitter both retweeted, and I want to get your reaction to it. So this random guy just makes these tweets, and this is what the tweets say. He says, "Elucid rap like chitlin smell." Next tweet, "Elucid rap like how gasoline fumes look." Says, "Elucid rap like the black blood around the bullet wound." Elucid rap like gout.
That one's good.
And Elucid retweeted all these, right? He says, "Elucid rap like the little rhyme part of fatbacks."
Well, Elucid has the most, like, I think the Elucid line that probably encapsulates all these tweets the best is real black, like save the chicken grease.
Yeah, Real save the bacon grease.
Yeah.
And the last tweet is Elucid rap like Jamaican mango plus lime conditioner. Jesus Christ, man. I have no idea who this guy is, by the way. Just some random guy on Twitter.
This makes me want to go back on Twitter. I shouldn't. I actually should because I need to promote the fucking show so more than 20 people listen to it. But every time I think about going back on Twitter, something horrible happens in the world. I'm like, you know what? I don't need to be back on Twitter. It's just going to make me hate the world even more. But no, I would say that actually out of all those are fucking hilarious, and that guy's good at Twitter. And I see what he's saying about Elucid, because I think Elucid is probably made more profoundly like pro-black and uniquely black song. Like, and I'm a white dude, I shouldn't be like, judging this one rapper is more black than the other or whatever. But you know what I'm saying. Although Woods does have one song, I think it's with Zilla Rocca, about going to the Jamaican spot to eat and feeling judged by how rude the people are that serve them.
Yeah.
That is the fucking funniest song, and I think that is arguably just as black, at least, as the Elucid line about the bacon grease. So, because I, too, feel judged when I try and go get Jamaican food. Probably more than Woods is, actually. So,
one more line for you from War Stories. What do you think? Well, before I say that, this is the most doom shit I've ever heard. He says, even the prosecutor considered dropping the whole thing, but then she said, nah. Like,
Doom would have said it slower. And, like, Doom wouldn't have had that a stroke of the pen line. Like Woods is still like rapping. Doom would have switched his voice and then she said, nah. That would have been the end of the line. Yeah. But yeah, that is so Doom to have like that character line and like switch line character voices in there. But then he has like one of the most devastating fucking lines right after that: a flick of the wrist, a shiv in the neck instead of the ribs. Like, instead, like, I'd rather, like, I'm still unpacking that, but it's like something that's so quick that could kill you, like directly stabbing you in the neck, as opposed, like, something from a prosecutor. I'm trying to, it's like a prosecutor who could, like, you could get killed in prison by an inmate, but a prosecutor can just end your life that much more quickly, just right to your face. And it's a flick of the wrist. It's nothing to her.
Yeah, that's a very interesting interpretation of that.
And that feeds into the line about Joseph K. when they led him to the ditch, he got the death penalty.
Yeah.
So yeah, that really does bring it from, slavery to the prison system. Really takes it totally to modern day.
What do you think about the fake 20s out the university printer? What the fuck is that?
Is that an Elucid line or is that a Woods
line?
It's
an Elucid line on the same song.
Yeah, fake 20s. I'm trying to. Yeah, Elucid's verse on this doesn't. It's very much one of the more indirect verses, abstract verses on the like. The thing about Woods abstract, like, Elucid for the most part on this album is more direct. He still has a few verses. This primarily among them that are I'm still unpacking. I'm going to be sitting with for a while. I'm probably never going to fully absorb. But he has that Makami / Ghostface Circa Supreme clientele quality where even when I don't know what the fuck he's saying, it sounds dope as fuck. So I'm trying to unpack that one. I think it's like a narrative that's in code, kind of.
I thought he was talking about how universities, I guess, supposedly guarantee a job after you're finished, but all they do is just put you in debt. So fake 20s at the university printer, maybe he's saying that, like, the money that universities guarantee after you graduate is fake. But that's kind of like, I don't know, because he's talking about school in that verse. You know what I'm saying? Like,
No, I think that he's actually I think he's actually telling a war story on it.
I guess about like the print of money. I guess the history of money.
Yeah, talking about he counterfeited money. That beef from 03, screeching tires, hold iron like a 7-member. I can remember silver bubbles and super Tims. That's what he was wearing. We called it fresh, not fashion. West Side Highway mashing, dumbing out, almost pulled out on Mother Gaston. Like, I think he's telling about something he did.
Oh shit! yo. Yeah, this is his war story.
Yeah, I think like he's kind of like Woods is like, I don't want to hear your old ass story, and Elucid's like, fuck you, I'm gonna tell an old ass story.
Yeah. It says 03. Maybe that's when it happened.
Yeah, So
yeah, interesting. Well, that clears everything up.
This is another one I think he might have covered on Call Out Culture, but I was driving around when they got to that part, and I don't think I 100%. So we covered the second and third best lines, most immediately grabbing lines on the album. I cannot let this podcast go without covering the first line that made me laugh the fuck out loud when I heard it, off of a Lucid solo shot on Solarium, nudging flat earthers off the block like Qbert.
You know, if you played Qbert, it just rings. It's so crazy how powerful the line is if you played the game. Oh my god.
But it even worked, but it's like as good of a one-liner as it is. And it's like, as far as like old video game nerd one-liner, like, first of all, this is like most of the Doom moments on this album come from Woods. This is a pure Doom moment because, you know, Doom hasn't played a fucking video game since like 1986. So this is the type of video game reference Doom would make. And but before that, he says, "Humor, use a goober." That's also Doom, by the way. Like Doom.
Come on, who the fuck says that? And Lucid is able to say shit like that and just continue like nothing happened. Like no one, that wasn't weird at all.
But then he says, "I'm dialing Arecibo, not an Uber." I wouldn't know what the shit that means, but thank you for once, Rap Genius, because apparently that's a black car service out of black Puerto Rican car service out of Brooklyn. So, or a Brooklyn black car service named after the Puerto Rican city. Sorry. So and then it's power people, not computers, black futures. So he's saying, like, he's making a reference to people over technology, which feeds into a really old technology, like what's older technology than Qbert. So it's actually setting up a punchline. I mean, it's a dorky ass punchline. It's the best dorky ass punchline. But he's also talking about, like, who are flat earthers? Generally, a flat earther is going to be a backwards thinking racist motherfucker. I think the Venn diagram, you're not going to find too many woke flat earthers who are like, I'm all for, like, you know, Black Lives Matter, but the earth is flat. Like,
yeah, the Venn diagram definitely skews towards that direction. Yeah.
So he's definitely like, so even though it's like a straight up video game dork punchline, he also has deeper levels to it too. So that's how, like, that's generally what I think about this album, is that it works on a surface level and it works on a deeper level. It's fundamentally optimistic, but it has like the context and history and knowledge to inform it. So it's not blindly optimistic. Although I would say overall, it's definitely the first Armand Hammer album I would qualify as actually kind of optimistic.
There's a line on Solarium where he says, "Riding shiny rims and tires out the muck and mire." That's the riding shiny rims thing it's pretty positive, right? Like, you're just celebrating your shiny rims out the muck and mire, and then he's like, oh, now he's cynical again, because now he's saying that a lot of dudes in poverty will buy a shiny car but live in a fucking, you know, hut. They're living in poverty, but yet they have a expensive car parked outside.
And yeah, to your point, he kind of goes back and forth between optimism and pessimism for the rest of the verse too. Blues for a new birth, positive, rebirth, cool world, red earth. That's negative. He's referencing global warming. Like, it's a cool world, but why is cool? Red earth, because the earth's getting hotter. So they who thirst quench first. That's good. You know, people who are thirsty are getting satisfied. Faith without works. What's faith without works, though? You're not doing the work, but why? So why are you faithful? Your faith is empty, dead in a hearse. So that's where you end up. Everybody's dead at the end. Never under tally my worth. He's ultimately bragging at the end, and then church. So he's like tying it together like a religious reference, like just church, like a brag. So it's like he goes back and forth. Like, that's the thing. It's optimistic in ways that, like, Rome was like, shit's on fire, fuck y'all. And then Paraffin was exploring why shit was on fire. And this is kind of rebuilding from it, but not being so blind as to think that you can just recover.
Yeah.
Without being scars, without there being trouble. But knowing that recovery is still a possibility. Like the end of the last one with Wood, like, I know, like, to just tie back to the beginning when we were talking about Root Farm and Wood saying he can't see himself doing it. One interpretation is that maybe they're making peace with the fact that the world is ending. But maybe another interpretation, because I think there's at the very least two meanings to everything on this album, is that maybe that they're finally seeing that the world there's a possibility that they could say that, if not save the world, at least live with what's left, or live with what the world could become.
That's what I get. That's a general idea that I get. In general, so I think solarium is like if you took a pessimistic cynic to a birthday party and he said, "Oh, this is kind of fun." That's solarium.
Yeah.
Because the beat is King Ghidorah, super positive jazz sample. It's super bright, like palm trees in California. It's the brightest
Yo,
song. Go
I'm
ahead.
glad you said Peter, because that I was trying to remember what it fucking reminded me of. Fast Lane. Reminds me of Fast Lane.
Yeah, man. It's so bright, and then you have this cynic barely being positive over this really bright beat. It's the most optimistic you'll ever hear Lucid, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like ultimately that's the message I get out of the album. It's people who have seen a lot of shit and been through a lot of shit, who are cynical, fighting to be positive, not resigning. And definitely the album resists being put into a box. Like, I feel like it's, if you like that, I guess is what they were frustrated about when they were talking about call out culture, but it's just like kind of bemused by or amused by, was that everybody wanted, like, they heard Paraffin and they wanted Paraffin too. And Paraffin wasn't even really Rome 2 either. Like, it was an evolution of what was going on Rome, but it was also like elaborated on it, and it went in like new directions. And this goes in even further different directions. And there are parts that sound like older Armand Hammer, but ultimately this is definitely the furthest afield they've gone from their initial mission statement, I would say, while still staying true to themselves.
There's more new shit on here than callbacks for sure. Than I guess historic pandering. There's more new shit on here. I wouldn't even call it historic pandering. It's not Marshall Mathers LP2. What I'm saying is there's more new shit on here conceptually than them going back to the old roots. Basically what you just said.
Well, I guess a good way to put it would be that I remember when this, in the lead up to this, it was also the lead up to the Run the Jewels album, and I was really excited for this and not really excited for the Run the Jewels album at all. And I was like, compared to the Armand Hammer album, it's going to be boring. And it was, but it was still like, I listened to the Run the Jewels album and it was good, but it was kind of like, it was like a summer blockbuster series that had found its groove and wasn't really about, like, it might do one or two things that surprise you, but ultimately it's not going to veer too far out of that lane. Whereas with like Armand Hammer, it's more like a fucking, like a Coen Brothers movie or something, where they're going to follow their own muse every time out, and it's useless to try and pigeonhole them into, like, to impose your own narratives on it, I suppose, because they have way too strong of individual voices and a collective voice. And yeah, so I think that's what they were trying to say, where it was like they were reading all these reviews about like how gritty and industrial it was, and they're like, "Nah, man, go outside and read it on a fucking nature walk. Read it, listen to it on a nature walk. Like, you're getting it wrong." And I guess what I kind of wanted to close on was something Lucid said during the Call Out Culture podcast. Was he was talking about how, and this is something he shares, actually, we mentioned him a lot during this podcast, which makes me think our next episode together should probably be a Makami album. But Mock definitely shares this, considering he sued Rap Genius and Droog followed suit. Lucid's opposed to having lyric sheets, which I should check to see if lyric sheets came with any of the shit I bought from him off Bandcamp. Because I definitely bought every egg I cracked today was double yoked.
Well, I can confirm that the Shrine CD does not have a lyric book in the CD.
Okay, that would support what he said, is that he feels that rap is not to be read, rap is to be heard, because when you say it, that's the definitive word on it, whereas when you write it down, people can just, it's infinite interpretations, and it takes away the authority of the author. That's not how he said it, but that's kind of what I got out of what he said. So how do you feel about that? And
who said that? Who said that? Lucid or Makami?
Lucid. Makami doesn't say. Makami's just like, don't write down my shit, I own it. Like, he doesn't really like elaborate on why, but he did sue Genius. But yeah,
it might be, if you were to ask Makami, wherever he is, Antarctica, whatever the fuck he is, right? If you were to ask him, he will probably say something similar to that, I would say. But I think he's more of a what do you call it? A marketing tool, a marketing move. But okay, so Lucid's quote on that. I don't see anything wrong with that quote, man. I think it's fine. You know, Rap Genius, I don't think anyone really respects the website. Like, I haven't heard anyone say that Rap Genius is like one of the best things that happened to rap. I don't think anyone's really said that. I love Rap Genius, man. Well, I think I've heard that, but I don't think that Rap Genius is really taking that seriously because, you know, Rap Genius did not exist when Matt Villainy came out, and I would assure you that Matt Villainy, you know, in the decade before Rap Genius existed, Matt Villainy was interpreted certain ways. And, you know, with Doom's deadpan delivery, it makes it hard to understand what he's talking about. But I would say that Elucid, when I hear Elucid rap, like I would say one good example is from Paraffin, the song Bob Barker. If you can't say fuck the police out loud and in public, we can't deal with you. Okay, that's a pretty clear line. I don't have to read that. The way you said it, I can definitely understand what he's talking about. So based on that one interpretation of that one song, hearing the lyrics instead of reading them being the way you should interpret rap, I can agree on that. Unless the rapper is deadpan as fuck, then that's a little bit different, in my opinion.
Yeah, that is, I guess, the problem with that is if you're really a sarcastic rapper or like you depend a lot on intonation to get your point across.
Like Milo.
Yeah, like Milo has a line, like I actually like about virtue signaling on one of his songs or whatever. And if you just read it, you'd be like, what's this alt-right shit? But if you hear Milo say it and it's like, oh, he's being sarcastic. Okay. So it comes across completely different in the way he says it. The reason I brought it up is like this episode wouldn't be nearly what it was without Rap Genius in front of us to like analyze these lyrics. Because I'm like thinking about it, I'm like, I have a greater appreciation for a lot of these songs now. I already love these songs, but now I'm reading them and unpacking them. I'm like, damn, there's a lot more going on here than I would have thought. But it's like, this is not necessarily like Woods was silent on it. Woods kind of just like, Woods is way more relaxed in an interview setting than you would think, by the way, considering how like serious some of his verses are. But also he's fucking funny, so it shouldn't be surprising because he's like got jokes on jokes and like pretty much all of his verses, even the really serious ones, have at least one punchline in them. So it shouldn't be so surprising that he's relaxed in an interview. He didn't seem to have as much of an opinion on it as Elucid did. And for the record, Elucid didn't like Woods said it like Woods kind of gaslit Elucid into talking about it. Like I don't think Elucid wasn't like, yeah, I don't like he didn't bring it up himself. But it's clearly something he did feel a certain way about. I just thought it was interesting that we got more of an appreciation out of interpreting these songs through having them in front of us on Rap Genius, which is a way that one of the people who made the album doesn't really think the album should have been absorbed that way. So I just thought that was interesting. But
well, you know, I want to ask you, what do you think? Well, it's such a tricky topic because I think there's such a thing as overinterpretation in terms of. I guess Matt Villainy, I keep referencing this album because I think on Meat Grinder, there's lines on that song, just that song by itself, that still, when they're explained, they don't make a lot of sense. Like on Rap Genius, if you go to Matt Villainy's Rap Genius, I would say about 70% of the interpretations are just their reaches or their guesses. Because when I read them, I'm like, this does not make a lot of sense. So is there a penalty for the listener when they overinterpret a song or a line? Is it better to not read Rap Genius to better appreciate the artist, even if the artistic intent is unknown? Like Elucid says, artistic intent, right? Well, what if I don't know your fucking intent, dude? Not Elucid, I'm just saying in general. Aesop Rock, for example, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I don't know what you mean by this line. So Aesop Rock, in an Open Mike Eagle podcast, Aesop Rock said to Open Mike Eagle that a lot of his lines are personal metaphors that only he would understand based on his own life. Are you fucking kidding me? Now, it's fine. That's fine. I don't have an issue with that. But when you put it in a song, it's like, well, I don't know who this guy is. So there's some guy you're talking about you met 10 years ago. Like, it's hard to talk about this because the artistic intent is not very clear all the time. And with Matt Villainy, I mean, dude, like, what the fuck? Like, the cold hand reaches, the old hand reaches for the cold old tan Elises? What the fuck is he talking about?
Jesus.
It could be anything. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it doesn't make any sense. I'm just saying that that's the context I'm talking about. I don't know. It's very hard to talk about. Very interesting discussion though. Very interesting question, I think.
Right. I don't have an honest answer for that, but I mean, I can say certainly that I appreciate this album now more than I did 2 hours ago. Just like, for example, just looking at Slewfoot, which I always knew was a comment on race. I didn't appreciate it as much until I actually looked at Genius and saw like all of the references that Woods was making there. And like, you see how he ties it together with the whole CCE theme, or something like War Stories, the way like all the images flow one from the other, bring the past into the present. But then again, maybe he didn't intend to do that at all. Maybe he just thought shit sounded dope together. And he's like, what's this fucking nerd talking about? So maybe I'm completely off.
Man.
Oh no.
I hate that you said that. I really hate that, because now I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about whether or not Woods was like, oh, whatever. Woods was like, oh, I'm going to write this, whatever, bro. I doubt that. But, you know, there's some times when rappers are just like, whatever, I'll write this shit, whatever. Who cares?
Yeah, I highly doubt that, like, Woods is, like, Wiz Khalifa style writing his verses just because they rhyme together well. I something tells me that's not his process. But,
you think Makami writes like that?
Sometimes. I think Makami is like I think Mock is like. I would never guess on Mock's writing process. Have you ever heard the song? I'm sure you have. You have. It's on the fucking. I think it's on the Spook. Doot doot doot.
Is that what he said? Spook doot doot doot.
The song is called Doot Doot Doot, and it's 6 minutes long, and 2 minutes of it is the chorus, just him going doot doot doot. Doot. Oh
yeah.
It is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I love it so much. But it's like he knows like what people were making fun of him and Fahim for doing, and he just does it for like the most absurd length of time ever. So I think that Mock's sense of humor gets misinterpreted a lot for people who don't think he even has a sense of humor. Like, he really does. So maybe we'll do the next one of these for Mock's Hard Lemonade when it comes out.
Yeah.
Although we won't have Genius to look at for that one. So
are you trying to do a part 2 to this album? Or are you done with this?
Oh no, we could do a part 2 for sure, because I'll be listening to this for the rest of the year. But I'd also like to do Furtive Movements at some point too. So
okay.
But yeah, so I guess this is going to wrap up part 1 potentially ? Of our discussion on shrines. Thank you to Jurmainson for joining us on this episode. There will definitely be more of this coming in the future. And we are living off borrowed time. And see you next week or later this week, depending on when you hear it.
It ain't gonna never stop. 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 It ain't gonna never stop.
Time will tell. Time is yet to be conquered by man. But when the time is right, perhaps the greatest revelation of all time will dawn upon us.